A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by Punch Up Entertainment. I am your humble host, Mike Gargoni, and joining me, as always, the security officer to my guarded Wookiee, John Campbell.
That's the first one I've gotten right off the bat of your references there. Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to May the Panel Be With You. We are deep in it now, John, right in the middle of the first arc, let's say, of the 1977 Marvel Star Wars comic, issue number 3 we are on.
Oh, yeah. Right smack in the middle of A New Hope.
Yes, indeed.
We're halfway through the movie, and I will say, just overall my reaction to this issue is what I was saying last week, which is 6 issues is a lot to devote to this 2-hour movie because I'm feeling it drag now. But by the time we're still on the Death Star at the end of this issue, I'm like, oh my god, okay, wow.
Yeah. I will say this much. After last episode, I did a little looking around just to see how many other times A New Hope has been adapted in comic book form. And it's a few.
Yeah.
None of them are quite this long.
Yeah. I mean, A New Hope is a great movie, but one of the things that makes it so great and kind of the way it was almost like a proof of concept in some ways is it's very focused and streamlined. It's pretty quick, you know.
Yes.
It's actually, compare it to the rest of Star Wars, a pretty small story, even though it begins the whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of why it was so successful. It's got these, like, core hero's journey tropes that are succinct and maybe not, like, as expanded upon as sci-fi nerds would eventually like. And obviously there are some pitfalls where that's concerned when you have Obi-Wan calling Darth Vader Darth as though that's his first name, and other things that would become complicated snarls in the canon going forward.
I will say the Darth thing now reads as like him just being shitty. Like, that's right, Darth.
Well, especially after the Obi-Wan show, there's like kind of a reason for it now, which I didn't know we needed.
Yeah, the Obi-Wan show did a lot to try to go like, let's kind of try to make this work. And it mostly did, surprisingly.
But yes, we've got issue number 3 here. Again, mostly the same creative team. We've got Roy Thomas writing or adapting some kind of shooting script, as we've discussed previously. We've got Howard Chaykin on pencils. We've got Steve Leialoha on inks and colors, and Tom Orzechowski on lettering.
Do you like the way that they run out of space for the creative team on that first page?
Well,
but just briefly, as you were looking at that, it's like, Roy Thomas, Howard Chaykin, and Steve Leialoha, and then colors Leia, and there's some guy named Orz who's doing a letter.
Well, we'll show that off here in a minute, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll be able to see just how much they run out of space. But let's start with the cover here, because what a cover.
What a cover! I don't know where this location is. They're telling me it's the Death Star because it's proclaiming "Battle on the Death Star."
Yes, indeed.
But what is this background of weird, like, computers? It looks like they stumbled onto the set of 2001: A Space Odyssey more than Star Wars here.
It honestly looks like the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
It does look more like especially the way it's drawn in the comic, which is weird for something proclaiming battle on the Death Star, and also. I mean, just murder left and right here, right?
Well, look, everyone's shooting everybody, and we've got Han, Leia, Luke, and Chewie busting out. I think this is supposed to be the detention level scene where they're busting Leia out, but obviously everyone's got a handgun. Luke's got his lightsaber out. None of this actually happens in the comic.
Doing nothing with it. He's basically just going, "Hey, man, I got a lightsaber, and I'll use it."
Everyone's lasers are pink, including the laser coming out of the lightsaber Luke is holding, which
they both the color and the shape of the lightsaber blade are so inconsistent through this comic at this point.
And again, as we've said, we don't think anyone drawing this thing had any idea what some of this stuff actually looked like beyond like black and white set photos, maybe, and also, concept art.
How small the hilt on Luke's lightsaber is here.
Yeah, it looks like he's holding, I don't know, like the broken off handlebar of a bicycle or something.
Yeah, it's not at all impressive. Also, just this is a little chaotic to me. I mean, it's designed to be chaotic, but it's a little too chaotic, I should say, because the way this stormtrooper in the foreground is falling, it took me a while to realize, like, oh, that's a second stormtrooper in front of him that's shooting us in the air, and then that's his arm going that way.
Yeah, because at first that helmet in the front kind of looks like the first stormtrooper's knee as he's falling backwards.
Well, because
it looks like he's holding a second blaster with his foot.
It does, because it's the wrong shape, that stormtrooper helmet. It's very like conal,
or like R2D2.
Yes, I was gonna say it looks like a trash can, or yes, in Star Wars parlance, R2D2. It does have that shape, and so it took me a while. I stared at this last night, prepping for the show, going, "What's happening?" Oh, okay. And the stormtrooper in front also looks a little bit more silvery.
Yeah, again, these are like digital prints that we're reading on Marvel Unlimited. Not a sponsor, but I'd like them to be. But
yeah, we'll take some of that Marvel cash.
And so I don't know how warped the colors are at this point with the scanning processes, because I've seen that before on old scans where the colors get messed up somehow in the digital transfer.
And then I just love how much Chewie is the center of this image, and he's just like, yeah.
Well, Chewie's at the center of a lot of this issue, because let's get into the first page here. We get that janky Star Wars logo again at the top of this page.
Oh, this needs to go, and now. It's borderline insulting to the franchise. Star Wars!
With the stars and the A's, yeah, it's not great.
Yikes.
But yes, we get right up here, we get Roy Thomas, Howard Chaykin, Steve Lealoa. Steve Lealoa gets credits on here twice, because he gets the illustrator, which is the inker, and he also gets the color credit there, but just as Leia. Leia? I'm not exactly sure how to say his last name. So
Leia, I mean, we want to say that it's Leia because we're reading a Star Wars comic anyway. Right. But also, I don't know why. Wouldn't it have been easier to put Howard Chaykin pencil, Steve Lealoa colors and inks, and then wouldn't that have saved the space that they need? Because I also love...
They wouldn't have to just totally cut Tom Orzechowski's name?
He's also worked on the book. He's over here. But I love that his illustrator credit is actually pushing the color credit that he has there, too. Yeah. It's so ramshackle compared to the way comics are made today digitally and stuff, right? That this does look like somebody wrote this in and went, I'm out of room here. Okay.
Well, and you've got to remember, this is pre-digital, so there's no like precise spacing. There is a copy editor somewhere arranging those names on the page with like a razor blade and tape.
It's Roy Thomas.
Yeah.
Scripter and editor here.
Oh, so, he's the editor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we can hold him personally responsible for every decision we don't like.
Speaking of personal responsibility, we leap in here to the Death Star ! In the most metal font ever.
What is this Lisa Frank 1990 Trapper Keeper coloring and font here? Death Star!
Yeah, this is Gem and the Holograms font, I believe.
This Death Star is truly, truly, truly outrageous.
Truly outrageous.
God, and also... immediately, the coloring in this issue is... The coloring across the board in this book has been wild, but I really started to notice it here. And I want to talk specifically about this planet of Alderaan. What is going on? We used every color we had on it.
Well, look, sometimes planets are yellow, and sometimes they're the color of vomit. Those are the two planet colors we have, John.
Well, later they do, because I love them in the writing. They love to tell us what color the planets are, but they call it the blue planet of Alderaan, which in the movie, if I recall, it was primarily blue.
Yeah, Absolutely. And here it's green and purple and other shades of green and some more green and a little bit of blue.
Not only is it multicolored, they're all super gross. Sorry about the vomit. Like it's all just like, ugh. It's the worst shades of green and stuff. And then talking about green, do we all remember these very green Imperial uniforms from the movie?
So yeah, that is a big thing. In this first few pages here, we are on that scene where Tarkin is trying to get Leia to give up the location of the hidden fortress, cough cough, and we have all of our Imperial officers are now dressed in greens and yellows and reds. They look like British officers from World War II.
They do, yeah, because if we go to the next page here, you really get a look at Tarkin's uniform. By the way, I do think their Peter Cushing likeness is still getting the best of anybody's likenesses in this comic.
Well, I think, again, we have the most photo references for Peter Cushing at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you get into this main close-up of him on the third panel here on page 2. Great. Like, that's a great... I want a Van Helsing comic drawn by Chaykin now. But yeah, what is this outfit? And he wasn't wearing this in the previous issues.
I think he was wearing something like this, but it was more the mottled gray and blacks that we're used to with Imperial officers.
I mean, honestly, I think the Empire would have done better at these outfits. These make him look a little friendlier.
Well, yeah, until the bottom half of this page, because, we have the classic exchange, and it's almost word for word what we have in the movie, where you will give us a target, a military target, name the system. And then we have her admitting to Dantooine, a planet which we'll come back to down the road, I assure you. We will get back to Dantooine.
I expect we'll get back to everything, especially if we're covering the comics. We'll get everywhere in Star Wars, man. And it's all this is all great stuff. Once again, the dialogue is great. I can it's recalling the movie, so I'm hearing this Cushing. You are far too trusting,
But we have this mirror of an iconic Cushing line of "You're far too trusting," and then we have the complete deletion. I wouldn't even say deletion. They don't know how iconic that Death Star firing sequence is going to become. So we don't get a shot from the exterior of the Death Star shooting a laser. Oh. We don't get any laser at all other than in the captions. All we get is on screen Alderaan blowing up.
And Alderaan blows up bigger here than it does in the movie, actually. Look at that planet, man. That is gone.
Yeah. It's just interesting how this comic obviously can't see the future, so it isn't aware of what in this movie is going to become the iconography that will go down in history. And that green laser meeting at a singular point and then firing down out of the Death Star is so iconic. And it's so, to the point where they recreated it perfectly in Rogue One, because it's so, everyone knows the scene of the guy in the helmet pushing the lever slowly down and the two guys on the edge of the thing when the laser goes shooting past.
I mean, I think that's the other thing, too, is it's not even just the laser. It is, we have such knowledge of how the Death Star functions, and you go to that guy and he pushes the thing and they pull the lever, and it goes past the guys. I mean, those watching us on YouTube, there's a Lego recreation of it behind you, Gurgani.
Yeah, absolutely. There's several Star Wars Lego recreations behind me.
Yeah. I was actually going maybe I should put some of my Star Wars stuff behind me for the show. I did get I did pull out my Han Solo hat for the show now, which I did. This is a Disney Parks official hat that I actually got at Galaxy's Edge. So,
because I'm sure the mouse appreciates your dollars, John.
You know, much stuff in this apartment is from the mouse.
Oh, I mean, look, you can see the shelf of Marvel crap behind me. So I know it.
You can see some of my Marvel toys over there, but there's Marvel and Star Wars stuff all over the place here. So, so Alderaan is now just a ball of fire at this point, and boy, Obi-Wan's feeling it on the next page, isn't he?
Yeah, here we get a couple of differences because, again, we have these strange references to what the Force is that becomes a bit more streamlined in the actual movie. When people have to deliver these lines as dialogue, it's clear that some of the rough edges that Lucas wrote were sanded off by actors who were being paid to say things out loud.
And I'd say my favorite thing that really made me laugh last night is when he goes, he says, I felt a sudden great ebbing in the Force, Luke. And then Luke goes, the Force? You mean that thing you talked about?
Because we are in the era in which Marvel always treats every issue as though it could be somebody's first. So there are needless recaps even here in an ongoing adaptation of A New Hope.
I love I just love how passe Luke is never this passe about the Force. Like, you mean that crazy thing you're talking about there, Ben?
Also, for a few panels in this issue, Luke says his full name every time he says Ben Kenobi, and that always struck me as weird because that's not one of those like names you say the full name of every time.
What are you talking about, Ben Kenobi?
Right. Ben Kenobi, are you all right? Hey, we just say Ben.
Also, everyone calls Han Solo throughout this, which they definitely call him Han in the movies. Like, Luke is always going, what do you mean Solo? And then at one point, Obi-Wan calls him Mr. Solo, and that really threw me.
I think the prefix of Mr. used in Star Wars, now that I think about it, I cannot recall an instance.
I don't think... I think Obi-Wan might call him Captain Solo at some point. You get that or something like that, but no, I've never heard it. Excuse me, Mr. Skywalker, that never happens.
Pardon me, Mr. Vader.
Yeah. Mr. Vader, here's your coffee.
No, Vader gets his own coffee. We saw that last issue.
That had to be a Chaykin edition. I don't think that was in any script or anything there. And then we get consistently, just this page is just full of this weird 3PO rendering and...
Oh, yeah. Again, just assume 3PO's face changes every single panel he's in.
I mean, and it's the same with most of the characters, right? Like, sometimes it's a pretty good Alec Guinness representation. Sometimes it's just generic old man.
I actually think Luke's face is a bit more consistent in this issue than it's been in the previous two.
It's better. It's a little bit less Prince Valiant, but Han is all over the place. And we still have... Chewbacca really weirds me out. It's the inking and the color. Everything about Chewbacca is weird. It's that thing where it's like 85% correct.
There's a strange uncanny valley for a character that we're so used to seeing that to see an artistic representation of it, like seeing in this bottom left panel here, where we get the beginning of the scene where Chewbacca and R2 are playing space chess. I know the game has a name. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's mostly been called space chess.
That's all I ever knew it as.
Sure. But to see Chewbacca kind of like bundled in on himself and kind of crouching in with his elbows tucked in and his knees up is such an awkward pose to see Chewbacca in that it is uncanny.
I mean, and the way he's drawn his face and the coloring of it, he really does feel like they pulled him from the Planet of the Apes comic more than he looks like Chewbacca. And then, of course, he's hitting us with another of his famous catchphrases, Garunk, Garunk!
Oh, you know, a classic Garunk, Garunk.
I love that's two distinct thoughts. First, it's a Garunk, then it's a Garunk.
Oh, it's true. Well, you not to be confused with Garunk, Garunk. Garunk, Garunk is actually an expression of frustration when playing space chess.
It certainly is. So if we go to the next page here, Chewie is furious on this next page.
Which, you talked about this comic maybe like taking too much time to adapt everything. The fact that this comic actually gives time to the whole maybe let the Wookiee win scene is maybe something you might lose in a comic book adaptation.
It's the interesting thing, right? Because we're talking about this is in here, but the Death Star firing, we can just skip over that in some, words and such. But
that being said, this scene is replicated in other adaptations because it has also become iconic. Let the Wookiee win scene.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean the whole classic. droids don't rip people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. And then, it took till Solo, but a few things have tried to get Chewie tearing people's arms out in there because of this line.
My favorite thing is when you're playing as Chewbacca in most of the Lego Star Wars games, his like heavy attack button is just rip people's arms off.
Oh, that makes complete sense, especially in a Lego setting. That's perfect.
And there's a very satisfying popping sound when it happens.
I mean, I will say though, when you go down to the third panel in the middle here, Chewie does look like he's ready to tear R2 apart.
Yeah, as opposed to in the movie when he leans back with that self-satisfied Wookiee smirk and puts his arms up over his head. Now he's looming over the space chessboard and looking down at R2 like, I'm going to tear this little trash can apart.
Which just makes, I mean, this is the thing. Chewie is so much more upset in this comic than he is in the movie about losing he's very frustrated in the movie, but here he's in a murderous rage. And that self-satisfied hands behind the head, and look, we don't know what they have, obviously, but that is so key to defining Chewie's personality.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it always struck me in the years watching that scene that is just something Han says to kind of like fuck with the droids and to make sure like he's doing good by his buddy Chewie.
Well, because Chewie is, and one of the reasons he is such a fan favorite, he is a gentle giant. Certainly he is capable of being vicious in battle, but he is our friend and pal Chewbacca, right? And he does have a sense of humor.
Right. But imagine if we didn't have the characterization brought to Chewbacca by Peter Mayhew and all of the like physical ways in which he is portrayed. Instead, you just have words on a page saying, "Oh no, he'll rip your arms out if he loses."
Yeah, then he's this violent animal that Han. You're gonna keep the thing locked up downstairs, Han? Jesus. Now, here's the scene that I just think is very poorly rendered, once again, from the movie, and always with the... I don't know what they had, but this training sequence is just... It's so weird. You talk about... boy, even the dialogue where he talks about, ready, lightsaber? Lightsaber ready!
And again, we have that weird spelling of Sabre, S-A-B-R-E. You say it's Saber, but it's just weird to see it written like that.
Well, it's like a British spelling of it, and you do see it, but this is the only time I can think of that I've seen it used in conjunction with lightsaber.
Well, I believe in some of the original scripts, it was absolutely written as that.
Oh, it had to be, because I'm sure they're just taking from what Lucas gave them.
But again, we have a bit of dialogue down here with Obi-Wan saying, "You'd best continue your exercises, lad," and Luke responding with, "Yes, Ben Kenobi."
I'm trying to remember, does Ben call him lad in the movies even?
Maybe once, I don't remember.
Really? I mean, I'm starting to go, your best your exercises, lad. This is more Highlander. It's the quickening, you know?
Can you imagine if Connery had played Obi-Wan Kenobi? Like,
he would have been a much different Obi-Wan.
Because, let's see, 77, Connery...
We're in Zardoz, man. We're in Zardoz.
Yeah. I think he's almost too young at that point.
I think he is. He had... Because we're in that weird era of Connery where he's too old to be Bond, but he hasn't aged into the mentor roles yet, and Hollywood doesn't know what to do with him. So this is where you have him in stuff like Zardoz or The Great Train Robbery, and you're just going like, this guy doesn't know what to do with his career. So yeah, Zardoz was 74, so I don't even think he would have been a big enough star, honestly, at this point. He would have been like, they probably could have gotten it, but the studio would have been like, yeah, we need somebody a little bit more regal in Sir Alec Guinness.
Maybe. But again, you got to remember that Star Wars was such a studio-considered boondoggle as just like, who's making a sci-fi film in 1977?
It's interesting that it was like Guinness and Cushing were like, whoa, that we're going to lend it some legitimacy by putting these names in it. They were the names. Yeah. Which is weird to think about now, but yeah. But when he ignites this lightsaber, this weird, almost liquid kind of drawing on the blade,
it's got some Kirby crackle to it.
It does, and yet, man, I don't want to drag this into immaturity, but that's a pretty phallic looking hilt on it.
Oh yeah, it looks like a penis.
And the liquidy blade shooting out of it isn't helping.
No, absolutely not. And again, this is another instance where the hilt changes shape depending on which panel we're talking about.
My guess is they only have photos of it or something, and they cannot. And some of this is, there's a thing where we can kind of go, well, they didn't know, but also some of it is just like, you guys need to land on a design for the comic and just stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've read a more inconsistent comic in design than this.
I would say I definitely have, but not from Marvel.
No, yeah. So but the way this this little droid ball functions, it almost
the training
seems
remote, yeah.
They're playing baseball, it kind of looks like here. Or it's doing things where he's taking a swing at it and just dip into the ground, and it's got more personality than it does in the movie, actually.
Yeah, going to the next page here. What exactly is happening in this scene is wild, because the training remote is bouncing off the walls and the floor and shooting at Luke, and he's swinging wildly at it. And then we have this honestly pretty cool helmet that's shoved over Luke's head. It's a little Dr. Fady, honestly.
It's a little Dr. Fady is right, but shoved is also right, because Obi-Wan just jamming this thing on his head here with his gigantic hands. Look at Obi-Wan's hands in that second panel.
The perspective on that panel is wild. His hands are as big as Luke's head. And just do yourself a favor while you're listening to this podcast or watching it. Lift your hand up to your head and just hold it on the side of your head and just feel the extent to which your hand. Imagine now that the bottom of your palm was at your nose and your fingers could scratch the back of your head. That's how big Obi-Wan's hands are here.
No, it's absolutely wild. And once again, you would talk about this thing floating around, and Obi-Wan's hurling it in the air here.
Yeah, again, we don't exactly have what they were basing this on, but there was clearly some stage direction that they had that they're basing the motions of this comic on, and they don't know exactly how this thing's going to look on screen, so they're just kind of guessing. And we get the scene where Luke reaches out with his feelings and feels that connection and manages to forp the training remote off of his lightsaber. I love that sound effect so much.
We also get a swish.
Swish is good. Through the blade arc as it's moving through the panel. That's pretty good sound effect work.
Yeah. Forp.
But the forp as the training remote, again, it doesn't even shoot him. It just bounces off of his lightsaber.
It's weird because it shoots him in the first panel on this page. And then here it's just kind of bouncing around like a ball. And of course, once again, they haven't seen the movie, but in the movie, it's so subtle the way it just kind of goes,
it's like a little training remote. It's meant to float around a little bit and shoot at you randomly so that you can try to block it with a lightsaber. And
it's pretty subtle. Here, it really is like a character on this page.
Yeah, and also we lose complete track of just how big this space is in all of these panels because most of the backgrounds are just solid blocks of color.
Go to the next page, and it seems like the cockpit is just on the other side of this room here.
Oh, there's no spatial awareness of how the Millennium Falcon works in this comic. Not at all.
No, it's super bizarre in their bright green chairs. I mean, it clearly is. We talked about they probably had black and white production photos, but clearly the mandate here was just fill as much color as you can in this thing, because good Lord, it's almost assaultive to the eyes how much color is in this.
Yeah, and that really comes down to the colorist of just he was probably, considering that he is both the colorist and the inker here, we probably have a situation where he's just handed some rough sketches really quickly, and he has to come up with ways of filling all of this stuff in as quickly as possible.
Totally, and but it's just like at every move, it's just like more color, bright greens, the brightest of greens.
I have a feeling that Steve Lealoa is probably the most overworked person on this book.
100%. I mean, you don't see a lot of pencilers who also color.
No.
Pencil and ink, that's pretty common. Pencil, ink, and color. I mean, you are basically, yeah. At this point, you're just almost the whole artist. Although he's, I guess, right. Chaykin's doing the pencils, but still, and colors is a big thing. To do both of those is a lot. So they come out of hyperspace into the destroyed remnants of Alderaan here.
Yeah, they come out into that meteor storm, and they're like, what? The planet should be here. Oh, wait, there's a TIE fighter. Let's go after it. I do want to highlight the bottom panel here, because the arrangement of the dialogue bubbles makes no sense.
I will say this happens a few times in this book. I was reading it last night, unsure who was talking at times, or who to go to next.
Right. Usually it's a left to right, top to bottom kind of situation, but it really doesn't track in this particular panel.
Will say, I mean, I've been reading comics basically as long as I could read. I rarely have trouble following word bubbles like this. Yeah. This is the kind of thing where people who are new to comics go, I don't know what to read. And on this one, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. On this one, even I don't know where this is going. Also, not only do we understand how word bubbles work, we know the movie, and we're still having trouble following this.
Yeah. And again, now we have Han's face changing every single panel to the point where that bottom left panel, that like second to last one, where he is this like very intense, sharp-nosed, like angry eyebrows, and the panel directly above it is a completely different face.
They have no idea how to draw Han Solo. That is very clear that they have no character design for Han Solo, any kind of consistency. So let's go to the next page. Boy, though, once again, we don't get the Death Star firing, but we get a lot of the Millennium Falcon being pulled into the Death Star via tractor beam.
What's odd to me here is the scale. I don't think they really had a good idea of just how big the Death Star is, or how to convey scale on the page when it's not involving humanoid characters.
It's interesting. I don't know that they know much about what the Death Star looks like at all, because look at how there's a total lack of detail on it. It's bright white.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they took that line where they called it a moon quite literally and said, well, just draw it where it looks like a moon.
Yeah. And we do get that classic line on the page before, that's no moon, that's a space station. It's too big to be a space station.
That's where it is, though. It's no moon, Mr. Solo. It's a space station.
Yeah, calling him Mr. feels so weird.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Solo!
And we've got what would eventually become an iconic line of, I've got a bad feeling about this, on this, as they're getting pulled into the Death Star.
If we go down to the bottom panel here, we get weird designs on both Han and Luke in this close-up.
Again, I think Luke is pretty consistent. His angry eyebrows in this panel in particular are pretty intense. And the shadowing and inking here is definitely like romance comic adjacent.
We've talked about how pissed off Luke is in this comic. He's been, and here the gritted teeth and the, God damn it!
Yeah, in the movie, it definitely comes off as more whiny and more just like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to voice my opinion anyway. And this is just like, I am impotently angry about what's going on, and I will express it via rage.
I think them not having seen the movie, they don't realize just quite how innocent Mark Hamill's performance is, that he really is playing very sincere, naive farm boy.
Yeah.
Here he's just like, the fucking Empire, man! I tell you what, if I got a chance.
Well, I mean, you think about the old, like, space serials that Star Wars was definitely, like, pitched as referencing. Yeah, Flash Gordon and stuff. And, like, that's where the emotional levels are at in those, like, old serials, is this, like, oh, my God, Ming the Merciless, you'll pay for this!
That is true. Yeah, those guys, and of course later we'll have Death to Ming. I love Flash Gordon. Yeah, would you look at the size of that thing is on the next page, but then as we're saying, it's kind of small actually for our understanding, because the Millennium, it's certainly a lot bigger than the Millennium Falcon, but the Millennium Falcon is so tiny in the movie compared to it.
Right, and that's something the first movie is so good at doing is producing scope. Right from the first shot of that film, when you have the blockade runner being chased by the Star Destroyer, that's that moment when you go, holy shit, space is big.
I was going to say, that's really the thing that amazed people about that. People talk about seeing that in 77. That kind of scope had never been conveyed in a space movie really before. And you see it, I just did a rewatch of Star Trek The Motion Picture, because they did the 4K release of it, and just how much of that movie is them conveying the scale of the Enterprise, because they're trying to go, see, we have big ships too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first half of that movie is, look how big the Enterprise is.
The amount of time, and I just love, it's just like, should we, Captain, should we, no, Scotty, we just drink her in. We just drink her in, man. We don't talk when we're looking at the Enterprise. We just admire.
Well, there was a recent episode of Lower Decks where they visited Deep Space Nine. It's just like, oh, we can't quite land yet, Captain. What you do? I don't know. Circle the pylons and act like we're absorbing the Majesty.
Because then I watched Wrath of Khan right after, and that's like a 30-second scene of bum, 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 bum. Okay, now let's go.
Yeah. Whereas in this particular panel, when we're trying to convey the scope of the Death Star, we see the shadow of the Millennium Falcon cast over the Death Star. Where would that shadow be being cast from?
I have no idea. Where is the light source for any of this utter nonsense?
Yeah, but again, it doesn't.
Actually, looking at the shadows, they're under a sun.
I guess
they would have to be, right?
Again, this is not the Death Star we know.
It really isn't. Also, I love that the little opening like slots where the ships would come in are just perfectly Millennium Falcon size.
Yeah, like a toaster.
Yeah, just constantly pulling in Corellian ships like this.
Like, how does a TIE fighter land in that?
They can't. They have to go in the top where it top loads the TIE fighter.
Yeah, we get this exchange between Han Solo and Obi-Wan down here. Obi-Wan's face just becoming generic old man here for a second.
And also Han's face looking radically different between these two panels.
But saying that, like, there are other ways we don't necessarily need to fight. And this is where we get the cut to, again, the strangely garbed Tarkin. And I will say, this issue gave us some pretty good-looking Vaders.
Better looking Vaders than we've had. Vaders look pretty wonky in this book so far, and this is better. I actually do like the color note of the kind of red eyes on him. It's not consistent with the movie, but it is pretty evocative. The red eyes?
The lenses are a deep, dark red in the movies. They always have been.
Let me say, it is more evident red in this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is artistic license and highlighting it a little bit more.
It does give him a more kind of demonic, monster look, which I like. So yeah, this is the kind of thing where I turn to this page and I go, oh, so many word bubbles, so much writing.
And remember all of that dialogue between Vader and Tarkin about how the base isn't on Dantooine and she betrayed us, we need to destroy her, and Vader going like, no, she could be useful later, but we've also captured this Corellian freighter. It's the same one that left Mos Eisley, blah, yada, 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 yada. That is all here in 4 panels.
It really is, yeah. It's also just... Okay, the Vader design, but some of these poses. I also love on the third panel here at the top, the way his finger is coming out of the panel into the gutter.
Yeah, and the framing of some of these panels is just odd, right?
Yeah, very weird.
The weird Dutch angle in that third panel that's like a low shot of Vader with Tarkin over his shoulder, and then the next panel down is just a hard close-up on Vader's mask with just dialogue bubbles kind of eking out some of the details of the mask.
Well, it does just feel like, can we get some more dialogue bubbles in there? Vader's got a lot to say. And you kind of go like, does he though? He's just telling us more information we already know. They must have been trying to return the stolen data tapes to the princess. See last issue. We might be of some help there.
Yeah.
Soon in a sprawling hang bay of the great Death Star.
And again, the scale is completely altered yet again as the Millennium Falcon now does look kind of to scale with the Death Star once it's inside the hangar bay.
Mm-hmm. And then we cut to inside the ship where I will say, if you don't know, if you read this without knowing the movie, would this cut from the outside to Han in the hidden compartment make any sense?
Also, hidden compartment. It's clearly a hatch in the floor.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. In the movie, it really is like the floor panel that lifts up. Here, it is just like, well, they'll never find us in here. And then I will say, the last panel on the page, very interesting. I did not know Dennis Leary played Han Solo.
Oh, wow. There's some alt casting I'd have loved to have seen.
I love to smoke, Luke. I love it.
Also, going back a little bit, we do get the line, I sense something, a presence I haven't felt since, and then Vader trailing off. But that line happening directly outside of the Millennium Falcon as opposed to in a hallway somewhere.
Yep. Also, the way it trails off here makes it seem like a stormtrooper should be like, since when, Lord Vader? I haven't felt since...
Yeah, and we also get the classic Obi-Wan line here of who's more foolish, the fool and it changes a little bit, or the man that follows him. In the movie, it's who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him.
That's a better line in the movie.
It is a better line in the movie, and it turns out that some dialogue said by humans.
Yeah. Anyway, and everything is just so green.
Oh yeah, so much green. Green all over the place. Unless it's pink. Then it's all pink everywhere.
Yeah. We have a lot of green and pink ink lying around. Can we use this?
But I want to get to the next page because we get bodybuilder Chewbacca on the next page.
Oh, do we ever get bodybuild? Yeah, oh boy, you talk about inconsistency. I also want to get to this big box these guys are carrying and the description of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is kind of in the movie, but not like this, right?
It's pretty much like this in the movie. They carry a big box on board. They're carrying scanning equipment used to like basically check out the whole ship, and then they get jumped by Han and Luke.
They have an unexpected welcome party, and Han saying, "Shh, here they come." Remember that?
And the stormtroopers immediately going, "Hey, what was that?"
Yep. This happens once again. This happens so quickly. They come on board, and then they do the thing where they indicate like the comm isn't working. Mm-hmm. I do love the idea of the meaning of his hand signal is clear.
It's interesting that in the book we have here, in the movie, the call sign is TK421. In this, it's TX421, which I think is still a reference to THX 1148. But
I think it is. But yeah. And I will say, here's bodybuild Chewbacca, and he is bitch slapping a guy because that is the word.
Bitch flapping this guy.
Yeah. So he's slapping him.
THLAP.
Yeah, and he's saying Nurk.
The classic Chewbacca line of Nurk.
Yeah. But boy, how big Chewbacca is, how beefy he is really changes. Because here, he is massive.
And in fact...
This is Sasquatch, right?
Oh, this is like Sasquatch who lifts other Sasquatches for fun. To the point where his classic bandolier actually doesn't change size. It is now tighter on his body.
It is. I gotta get this thing off. I've been doing too many presses here. This chest is getting too big.
He looks like the Marvel character Sasquatch, honestly.
He does, yeah. Oh my god. And this guy...
Oh yeah, he's getting bitch slapped by a Wookiee. He ain't walking away from that.
What the? Yay!
Because yeah, we get Chewbacca, and on the next page we get disguised Han and Luke storming this little room, which again, we don't even really see the room. The backgrounds are so washed out as just color.
All the locations, and with a hearty Garoo!
I love a good Wookiee Garoo.
He's whumping everybody in that room.
That's a good action Chewbacca pose of just like the fist streaking across the panel. That's pretty good, actually.
The action pose is good. The character design is crazy wrong. But and also this stormtrooper just getting shot right in the face with a zick.
Yeah. What I want to talk about is how R2 plugs into the computer here in the bottom left panel, because it is radically different than what we see in the movie.
Well, also, apparently 3PO has to do it for him?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. But we see, so the blue stripe that is on R2's leg kind of lifts out like an arm and then plugs down into a computer, as opposed to the little, and I know the name of this thing, scomp unit that comes out of R2.
You know, doing this show, I go like, not that much of a nerd.
But the little plug that most droids have to plug into, like the standard Imperial sockets that we see throughout Star Wars.
They roll it up there, but yeah, like I said, I was more just thrown by Obi-Wan going, 3PO, plug in that R2 unit.
Well,
I expected this to go to like an extension cord coming out.
Yeah, at least he doesn't have a scene where it's like, well, this one's micro USB. What we need is USB-C or a fire cord. That might work too.
Obi-Wan going through drawers going, they have to have an adapter in here somewhere. Is there a dongle? Does anyone see a dongle around?
Damn Empire and their dongles.
This last panel, which is a close-up, very detailed Obi-Wan, but it's not Alec Guinness. It's the old man from Home Alone, apparently.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and he must go alone. He's going to go shut down the tractor beam.
Yeah, I must go home alone.
And again, we have a very angry Luke in that bottom middle panel.
He's just so pissed.
All the time, so angry.
But he's also going, we're with you, Ben.
Grr.
I'm a scary farm boy.
So we have Obi-Wan leaving, and then we have the whole bit where R2 finds the princess. She's here. Poet, poet, poet.
That is consistently becoming how R2 makes noise in this. But I want to get to, in the middle here, there's these 4 panels. This Han pose on that last panel.
Oh, with the leg up over his leg and kind of leaning back like he's a model lounging.
Yeah, because in the movie, he does do a, like, feet up on a table, kind of lean back. Here, though, he's doing a, like, check out this thigh.
Mm-hmm. In this stormtrooper armor.
I really love this, the way this hugs my curves.
The creamy ceramic of the stormtrooper armor impressed across his body.
Even the hand seems like he's smoothing it, like, stuff, my friend. And this is the scene, of course, from the movie where he's going, you have to help us save the princess. She might be really rich and give you money.
But not before we get Luke saying, I've seen her Solo. She's beautiful.
Yeah. And then Han's response of, so's life.
I actually like that response.
So's life, kid.
She's rich, so's, rich?
Yeah.
I think that dialogue is definitely smoothed out in the movie. It feels a little clunky here.
I think what we have here is the script, and what we have in the movie is Harrison Ford making it sound better, because from everything I've heard, Harrison Ford did a lot of tweaking of his dialogue. Mark Hamill did less, and I think that speaks to why those characters sound the way they do in the movie.
Yeah. So we get them resolving to go break her out of the detention level. Luke coming up with the plan to hook up Chewie in some electric handcuffs. I love electric handcuffs.
Yeah, what about them is electric exactly?
And in the movie, I think they call them binder clips or something.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And Chewie's not so happy about that, so he's saying, "Harangan."
He's starting up like a lawnmower.
Hold on. Here's your problem, Luke. You didn't prime him first.
Well, we need actually an oil gas mix in a Wookiee. That's how they run properly.
There we go. It's a 3 push. 1, 2. Okay, now pull it.
No, don't stop. You're flooding him. Flooding him.
And now Han's gonna put the cuffs on. Chewie's still not happy, so but just a gurk this time.
Yeah. So we get the scene of them walking through the Death Star, and actually the render of the hallway and the turbo lifts here is pretty spot on from the movie.
It is. Once again, they must have had it, aside from the colors, it is. And also the inconsistent colors. Why is the floor pink and then orange?
Don't worry about it.
That's the thing. It's like, all right, these designs are crazy, but why can't you stick to the designs?
It's because they're moving through the floors, and each floor is different color coded for your convenience, John.
We're on the orange level now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's all about navigation and being able to find your way through this massive space station. It's useful, actually.
I do love the guy going, where are you going with this thing?
Transfer from the other cell block, and this is when we have all hell breaking loose as Chewie, in just like savage Chewie fashion, just manhandles all these stormtroopers.
Oh, he sure does. And we're told Han and Luke shoot them, but we can kind of see that. Although I will say, with whoever it is that's frapping this guy here on the last panel.
Oh, yeah, there's a blast going through a dude's chest on that panel.
I was going to say, I don't remember a lot of blaster shots ripping through people like this. Good Lord, that guy is all kinds of dead.
At worst, we see people like flung backwards when Chewie's using his bowcaster or something.
We do. It seems that they take more. It's kind of like phasers in Star Trek too. It seems like it's more impact that messes their internal organs up than it is ripping through somebody.
Well, and a lot of the weapons in Star Wars cauterize instantly, so it's just like blackened holes and stuff.
This guy has a gigantic gaping hole where his chest was.
Oh, they punched out his stomach plug.
Yeah.
A la Kung Pao.
I will also say, then if you go to the next page, these blasters are just straight up shooting fire. For half a second, when I just flipped to this page, I thought, I'm sorry, have we brought in a flame trooper now to the second panel? Look at the fire coming out of that thing.
Yeah, and so we flip back and forth between this page and the page before. The amount of fire coloration they're using for the blaster bolts will change so radically between the two pages. In the page before, it's like yellow and oranges, and now it's bright yellows and reds and oranges, and it does look a lot more like fire.
And on that page there, when they're shooting this guy in the back, the blaster is bouncing like it's a flame. It's like hitting him and then turning.
And that panel just before, when the huge fuzz is coming out, you don't even see the gun. You just see this like explosion of plasma coming out of Han or Luke's hands. They're dressed as stormtroopers, so it's tough to tell who's who.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing all the killing here, but I will say, it's this last panel, this page, that gets me with this impossible turn.
Oh yeah, his spine is just completely snapped in half if he's turning like that.
Han Solo doing a full almost 180 turn with his hips here.
Yeah.
Good God.
So
and even the Luke pose is weird too.
Yeah, I found this scene a little interesting because we have this Imperial officer moving to set the alarm off, and Solo saying, "You got to stop him, kid." And so on this next page, we have this incredibly brutal frame of Luke shooting this Imperial officer in the back.
I know the death in this comic is so much more brutal than it is on the movies. Which you think about, they took 3 pages to do a pretty quick scene in the movie that's like, "Look out, he's loose!" and everybody's dead.
But in this, they really highlight Luke killing this guy to the point where it made me stop and go, "Wait, is this Luke's first kill?"
I think we saw both stormtroopers shooting people earlier.
But the captioning before is specifically saying they're shooting like alarm systems and cameras and stuff. And really only Han is gunning people down until this scene where Han says, "We'll make a space pirate of you yet," when Luke guns this guy down.
Line. Everybody remembers that famous line. Well, he's wrapped this guy something fierce. But I will say, I mean, this is to invoke our pal Dan Scotty. He murders the bejesus out of this guy.
Oh, yeah, to the point where he turns yellow when he gets shot.
I know. This is so bad, it somehow gave him liver damage. He's jaundiced now as a result of
one of them jaundice lasers. Got it. Then we have them charging down the hall. We do get that interaction that's so famous in the movie of Han going back and forth with the other security officer on the terminal going, "I'm fine. How are you?
How are you?" It doesn't quite capture the brilliant that beat and the "How are you?" the change in tone. But yeah, it's fair, and it is one of my favorites. And the shooting of the comm going boing conversation anyway.
Yeah, and then we have him saying, we're going to have company. Then we have Luke going down the hallway and him finding the, oh boy, his opening dialogue here of, you're even more beautiful than I, as he opens the door and sees Leia.
I mean, people always talk about how weird it is that he's obviously attracted to her in the movie, but it's so much worse in the comic. It's so much worse.
And you got to imagine all that dialogue was originally in the script.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Also, her pose here, of course, in the movie, it's that famous kind of almost seductive pose where she's laying on the bed. And here she's like against a wall going like, ah.
Well, I have no real bearing on what this cell looks like in this comic because it's just pink lines in the background.
Nope. And it's interesting. It's the reverse of what it is. He says, I've come to rescue. I'm Luke Skywalker. Of course, in the movie, he says, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Mm-hmm. Which feels a little bit more natural.
It does.
Her response of, you're who?
Yeah. We do. In here is, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Which is nice. I wasn't, but it is things like, I've come to rescue. I'm Luke Skywalker is classic, like Lucas not knowing how to write naturalistic dialogue. The man is so good at so many things, but like naturalistic human speech is not his thing.
And even this next line where Luke says, I've come to rescue you again. And he says, Ben Kenobi is with me and we've got your droids. And Leia responding with, Ben Kenobi, where is he? Obi-Wan? It's not even Obi-Wan, it's Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I thought that was complete nonsense.
Yeah. Though I will say it's a decent likeness of Carrie Fisher there in that last panel.
The first one that's actually really looked like her, I think.
Yeah.
Before we're back to more shooting.
We're on the last page of this comic. This comic ends so abruptly because
that was exactly what I was thinking about, where they're really treading water to get to 6 issues.
Because, we have Han shouting back, we've got Chewie, back up, we've got to retreat. Leia giving Han a hard time about the fact that they've cut off their only escape route, which I like that we're getting Leia's sass here right off the bat, because I was afraid the comic was going to lose that a little bit, because so much of that is Carrie Fisher's performance.
I mean, it's interesting how much of Han and Leia, because I think both of those characters were probably more than anything defined by their actors and their dynamic specifically, of course. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is captured here, and I do like the expression she has on this third panel here in the middle, like, look at this dummy. But also the just radically inconsistent Han Solo across all these panels. My God, this is look, who is this guy in that third panel? Who even is that?
Oh, I don't know.
That is the man from Atlantis himself, Patrick Duffy. Before he turns into another guy, and then a weird Han Solo where he just goes, if we're gonna die here, let's take a bunch of them with us. Yeah, that doesn't sound like Han Solo to me at all.
Yeah, look, Han's got a death wish and he wants to bring a lot of people with him. That's all we know.
And those guns firing zick, patik. Why the need for a different sound every time the gun fires, too? This is of the era, so
because Tom Orzechowski needs to justify his job.
This just every time these guns fire, they make a different noise. But it is interesting because, this is sort of a cliffhanger created only for this comic.
Yeah, and we get an early drop of a line that we wouldn't see in the movies until they're in the trash compactor, and that's 3PO, are you there? 3PO.
I actually thought the trash compactor was where they were going to leave us in the cliffhanger, which
right?
actually would have been better if it'd been like, oh no, the walls are closing, then will they get out?
Right, but no, that implies that next issue is going to be the first few pages are just going to be the trash compactor.
Which is kind of a waste, because if you're actually doing it based on the old serials that Lucas is, that would have been your cliffhanger, and will our heroes escape the thing,
or even them diving down the chute would have been like, where will this perilous path lead our heroes?
That would have been simple, and that would have taken like another panel, maybe.
But
instead we get, but Luke Skywalker's only answer is the blast of the troopers' lasers. By the way, lots of use of lasers. Coming closer. Closer!
Yeah, and a weird Luke in this last panel that looks a little bit like Sonny Bono, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, a little blonde Sonny Bono, going, I got you, babe. Yeah, and then the next issue promised us Ben Kenobi versus Darth Vader, dash, dash, to the death!
I am so curious. By curious, I mean I've read ahead, but
I read one a week, man. Your due diligence. You really research these.
But the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader in that scene on the Death Star has long been pointed at as like, okay, they just didn't have what we would know as a lightsaber duel yet. That wasn't really a thing established in the franchise. And whether or not the comic will beef that up to be a little bit more thrilling, I guess we will see next episode.
I'm guessing no, just based on what I've been reading so far.
But yeah, that does it for this issue. That's where it ends.
What's going to happen, man? I've been promised a duel to the death next issue.
Yeah, and look, someone's going to die. I'll say that much.
Obi-Wan does just disappear in this issue. He's like, I'll go shut down the tractor beam. And he doesn't come back.
He pulls a Gandalf in The Hobbit. That's exactly what he's doing.
I'll see you guys later. Bye.
But yeah.
By the way, bye, everybody.
See ya, dwarves. Adios.
Yeah. Gandalf out.
Yep, Gandalf out. His famous catchphrase.
Seacrest stole that from him.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
but
more Marvel shenanigans.
Can't wait for next issue. We've got 3 issues left in this adaptation of A New Hope. How do you think it'll end, John?
I don't know, man. I really hope they blow up this Death Star, though. Fingers crossed. I was going to say, though, as much as I'm enjoying this, I can't wait until we're just making shit up, right?
Oh, look. The sooner we get to Jackson, the happier I'll be.
Yes, I think everybody, both of us, anyone watching or listening to this, we're all waiting to get to the show. Might as well be called "May the Panel Be With You: Waiting for Jackson."
We are in countdown to Jackson mode.
Jackson is such a bizarre thing in the comics, and the fact that he's survived in some capacity throughout the years of this franchise is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, can't wait to get there, but first we need to get through A New Hope and what we know, tread those familiar paths so that we can branch out into that wild blue yonder. We'll get there eventually, but for now, thank you for listening. As always, you can find us online at a Twitter account I haven't created yet, and you can find all of Punch Up Entertainment's... you can see it somewhere on the screen, I'm sure. And you can find all of Punch Up Entertainment also on this channel that you're presumably already watching this on, but you can hear all the podcasts we produce there, including Material Components, which I host, Panel Up, which John and I both co-host. We have Action Shelf, which I believe is probably messing up the video quality of this episode as you watch, as somebody is waiting in the wings to record that show. So, until then, I've been Mike Gergoni.
And I am John Campbell.
And remember, may the panels be with you.